Now, as we get down to our content, we're going to talk about the quality indicators for consideration today. We began developing the quality indicators in 1998, and we've developed 8 areas. The first 6 areas: consideration of the need for assistive technology, assessment for the need of assistive technology, documenting that assistive technology in the IEP, then implementation, evaluating how it's working, and transition are all services that you provide directly to students. The last 2 areas are professional development and administrative support, and they're a way of supporting those first 6 areas. So today we're going to focus on consideration. Before we go any further, I'm going to want to find out a little bit more about what you know about quality indicators. We have about 164 people signed on at this point, and I would like all of you to respond to this by telling us, are you familiar with the quality indicators and using them? Are you familiar with them and helping someone else use them? Are you familiar but just not using them right now in your job, or is this all new to you? And as you start to respond, oh good, thank you. I can see a number of people responding right now. I'm going to give about 40 seconds till we get close to our total people, and then I'll show you the results. It's coming in nicely, about 125 of you now. And it is slowing down. I'll give you just a few more seconds. Okay. Let's look at the results. So in today's audience, we have about half of you who have never heard of quality indicators, or at least not familiar with their content. So that's exciting for us. Welcome to the world of quality indicators. We hope it'll be helpful to you. And we also see we have some that are familiar but not using them. So perhaps we can help you figure out a way that'll be useful to you. Now we're going to take a closer look. Yes?
Penny, can you click on the Skip to the Results tab?
Aren't you seeing that?
Nope.
You're not seeing it?
That's okay. Go on. Okay, so we'll begin looking at the quality indicators. Number 1 is AT devices and services are considered for all students with disabilities, regardless of the type or severity of the disability. So this indicator reminds us that the legal requirement to consider the need for AT applies to all students with disabilities. In the past, AT was rarely considered for students with mild disabilities, but we know that AT can make a difference in their lives. Just last year, a friend of mine, who's a parent of a 12-year-old son with a severe disability in reading, requested during the IEP meeting that AT be considered for her son. And she was told in a really patronizing manner that her son isn't blind and didn't need a wheelchair, so he doesn't need assistive technology. Unfortunately, misinformation like this can cause an IEP team to lack the clarity about the right to assistive technology. So what you see on your screen now is a self-evaluation matrix. Along with the quality indicators and their intent statements, self-evaluation matrices were developed for each indicator. This matrix encourages individuals to think about how services related to this indicator are provided in their own setting. The descriptors range from unacceptable on the left side, for example, AT is not considered for students with disabilities, to what we call the most promising practice on the right side. AT is considered for all students with disabilities, and consideration is consistently based on the unique educational needs of the student. So as we go through each of the indicators, we're going to display the matrix on the screen and talk about that indicator. If you decide at the end of the webinar to download the handouts from today, you're going to get a copy of the quality indicators with their intent statements and also the self-evaluation matrices.
During the development of the Individual Educational Program, or IEP, Every IEP team consistently uses a collaborative decision-making process that supports systematic consideration of each student's possible need for AT devices and services. Our intent here is that everyone realize the importance of having a process. If we don't train people to have a process, we can guarantee that we'll have very uneven, inconsistent consideration. So experience across just hundreds of school districts has really shown us that having a specific process improves both the quality and the consistency of how consideration is conducted during IEP meetings. And not every school district needs to do it exactly the same way or use the same forms or anything to guide it, but they have to have some kind of training to significantly improve the quality of consideration and the need for AT. Let's look at this matrix about using a collaborative decision-making process. We find that school districts that use a collaborative decision-making process during consideration find it improves the quality of the entire consideration process. If you look at this self-evaluation matrix, you'll see that on the left, the unacceptable descriptor is that no process is established for IEP teams to use to make the AT decisions. It's just there on the IEP form, and people often are not comfortable or even just don't have a sense of what it means to consider assistive technology. While in promise and practice, we see that having a process that is both well established and consistently used is where we want to be, so that across your agency, every IEP team will use a similar way of considering the need for assistive technology. Some agencies have developed simple forms that lead the IEP team through consideration, and that really helps. You know, I often think about it in terms of something else that I'm familiar with, and that's cooking. I love to cook, and if I'm doing a soup or a stew or a casserole, I really don't need a recipe, and I hardly ever look at one. But if I'm going to make a souffle, I need a recipe. I need to look at it multiple times. I need to follow it step by step. And I think consideration for most IEP teams is making a souffle. They often don't know what they need to know about assistive technology. They're nervous, and so they say, oh, well, that probably doesn't apply to him. So there are a variety of forms that have been created that districts can use to guide consideration. We're going to show you some. In fact, right now, I'm going to share my desktop and change what you're going to see, so don't panic. I want to show you one consideration form. This is from the QIAT website, QIAT.org. We're going to show you that website later in the presentation, but this is just one that was developed by a group of people during one of the QIAT seminars or summits. And I think the key parts here are, if you look at the left-hand column, we start with looking at what the student's performance is and what the IEP goals are, because all assistive technology is about what is the task we need to do? How can we help the student do better on that task? So we start with the area of concern and what task within that area of concern might be the problem. Now, if you discuss it and you say the student is making adequate progress with what we're doing now, then you just move on to column C and check the correct box. But if you've identified something in here, suppose it's written expression, then you'd move to column B and look at what have we been doing now? How's it working? Do we need something else? Have we been using assistive technology? How is it working? So this is just one way of looking at it. And the second side of this handout, when you go to the website to get it, you will find mentioned several other websites that have information and helpful forms about consideration. The Georgia Project for Assistive Technology, or GPAT, is one of those. They have several resources. Again, we're going to show you one of those in a few minutes, but they have several good resources for consideration, including a form that can guide your discussion. OTAP, the Oregon Technology Access Project, also has one. WADI, the Wisconsin Assistive Technology Initiative, has a number of forms for both consideration and assessment. If you go there and find those forms, The consideration pages are the first couple in the whole assessment process packet. So there's a number of other resources here, including Ocali, which has a module on consideration you can watch, and Texas Assistive Technology Network, I'm having trouble talking today, that also has a module for further study. So I hope you'll find some of those useful.
Okay, quality indicator number 3. IEP team members have the collective knowledge and skills needed to make informed assistive technology decisions and seek assistance when needed. So it's really important that someone on the IEP team has some knowledge of AT devices and services. In QIAT, we often say, not everyone needs to know everything, but somebody needs to know something. If no one on the IEP team knows anything about assistive technology, it leads to those non-consideration statements like, I don't think this applies to them. He just needs to try harder. Assistive technology is about removing barriers to student performance so that students can better demonstrate what they know and so that they can learn the skills that they need. The variations on the self-evaluation matrix range from the unacceptable situation where the IEP team doesn't have the knowledge and they don't seek help to the team that consistently uses their collective knowledge and then seeks help when they need it. Here's an example of a team that used their knowledge to consider assistive technology. So George is a middle school student with an IEP goal for completion of written expression tasks. His handwriting is mostly legible, but the handwriting task is laborious and it doesn't yield much in quantity. One of his teachers pointed out that computers were available in each classroom, so this would not be considered assistive technology for George since all students had access to the tool. George's mom explained that both handwriting and typing was difficult for him, and it was hard for him to focus on finding the letters on the keyboard or needing to think about how to form the letters. Both of these motor tasks that truly impacted his cognitive task of creating the sentences. The counselor added additional information regarding his typing, that he couldn't retain the location of the letters or the keyboard, and when he was spelling, that he couldn't retain the details of the spelling conventions. George's mom further explained that his ability to use traditional methods of handwriting or typing output may not improve, but his frustration would increase as the task and the writing expectation would increase. His mom told the team that when George was able to verbalize his answers, he produced the product in a different way, and that lessened the burden of the output. So one of the team members talked about her experience with speech-to-text on her mobile phone, and then everybody else chimed in that, yes, they used this feature on their phones. The team had personal knowledge about speech-to-text with items that they own personally, and they wondered if that might be a possibility for their student, George, that he might be able to trial verbal input. And then they wondered, would that make sense for him to use that on a mobile device or a laptop, or would he need someone to scribe for him? So after a short discussion, the team agreed that the student would begin a trial period with speech-to-text, and they would request an assistive technology consultation to determine which device would best support his needs.
Moving on to quality indicator number 4. Now we're looking at the connection to the real world here. Number 4 says decisions regarding the need for assistive technology devices and services are based on the student's IEP goals and objectives, access to curricular and extracurricular activities, and progress in the general education curriculum. Often IEP forms place the consideration of assistive technology very early in the process, sometimes before you've even developed the goals for the student, and I find it really difficult to make any decisions about assistive technology if I haven't first identified what it is I want him to accomplish this year. That's how I pinpoint where the problems might lie. So it helps to develop the goals and discuss where the areas of greatest concern might be before trying to consider whether the student needs AT. Of course, sometimes a student has already been using AT, and it may be obvious to everyone that it's still needed, but even in that case, the specific goals for this year might require changes to the way the AT is used, the amount of time it's used, or the location in which it's used, or the student may need additional training to use more advanced features. So it's really important to think about what needs to happen in general during the coming year, and then think about whether existing or new AT might be needed. Take a look at this matrix for quality indicator number 4. Unfortunately, some people still have the misconception that assistive technology is something really expensive, really separate, and unrelated to the rest of the student's program. In reality, the exact opposite is true. The expectations for the student, his or her goals for this year, are the heart of AT consideration. It is the task that the student must accomplish that drives the consideration process. All AT decisions are task-related. We choose AT to support a student in accomplishing a specific task. Therefore, you see in these variations that unacceptable is no connection to the IEP goals or the curriculum. And the most promising is when decisions are consistently based on both the student's IEP goals and the general education curricular tasks. One thing I want to point out here, as you may have already felt this as you read these different descriptors, but it's often difficult to find the exact words that fit your situation. And when I use this with groups of people, I often find people saying, well, I think we're a 3 here, but this isn't what I'm concerned about. I'm really concerned about this aspect of it. And so what I want to tell you is, even though hundreds of people worked really hard to develop these descriptors, they often don't fit exactly your situation. And the real purpose of the matrices is to help you focus your attention and the attention of your colleagues on your current practices and how they could be improved. So don't worry about finding the perfect description. Find where you feel you are in this area with at least part of the description applying to you. And I hope that's helpful. As I said, we worked really hard on this, but you just don't reach perfection, I don't think, when you're trying to write something that describes every situation.
Hey, Penny, before we move on, we're getting a request that we move off of speakerphone and just hold it to our ears.
Okay, let's try it.
And then Gloria,
I may need to grow one more hand to do that, but yeah, let's see how it works.
Okay. On to quality indicator number 5. The IEP team gathers and analyzes data about the student, customary environments, educational goals, and tasks when considering a student's need for assistive technology devices and services. So this indicator is really pointing out to us the importance of sharing and discussing all of the information you can about the student, certainly including the parent's perspective of how they see the student in the environment outside of school. Consideration is just a discussion, and what you bring to this discussion is the data you already have about the student, about how the student is performing in the current environment. So looking at the next matrices, without data and discussion, it's easy to make choices that don't work out in the long run. The promising practice on this matrices is to consistently gather and analyze data, look at the environments the student is in, and look at the educational goals and the tasks. So I want to share with you one way that an IEP team analyzed the data for the student that they were supporting. Recently, I attended an IEP team meeting, and the team was reviewing a recommendation from an outside agency, and the recommendation was for their student, Jerome, to use an iPad. The team agreed that Jerome needed a tool with features that included word processing, the ability to add fields to a scanned document, the ability to email, and then print. And the iPad had those features. During the discussion of what the use of the iPad might look like in different classes, the gen ed teacher shared a recent experience when she provided the use of a computer for Jerome to complete a writing activity. Jerome spent 30 minutes changing the font size, the color, the background color, and then she needed to give him additional prompts to focus on getting his thoughts on paper. His parent then added that Jerome had perfectionistic tendencies, and he would spend a large amount of time at home changing the font and just in general messing around with what the paper looked like. The team considered what word processing on an iPad might look like in day-to-day. So, for example, he would need to take a picture of a worksheet, and then he would make sure that the picture of the worksheet was straight on the screen. Or if he had to acquire a scanned worksheet on the iPad, he would then have to add the fields to that worksheet. And when they talked about all the prep work that was needed for this tool, they thought that that might cause or encourage more off-task behavior for Jerome, or, it might even frustrate him in the end. This team used the data about the student and the technology in the customary environment, which was classroom, to help determine what tool would be needed. They decided that Jerome should begin a trial with a laptop using scanned documents or emailed documents, along with a behavior plan that would allow him to change the font in the background one time a month. So the team agreed that an iPad might be a good tool for him for the future, but that right now it might provide more distractions than the support that he needs.
And quality indicator number 6 is when assistive technology is needed, the IEP team explores a range of assistive technology devices, services, and other supports that address identified needs. Exploring a range of AT devices is really important, and it can be a challenge for the IEP team if they have not had training about assistive technology or experience with assistive technology, or at least access to good information about what kinds of AT work well to address the specific tasks that they're concerned about. If you're ever in a position to review a number of IEPs, as I was as an administrator, it's easy to spot the ones developed by teams who lack this background information and experience, because they never or rarely include AT in the range of services and supports they include. Another thing that happens that I've noticed is that sometimes looking at the list of accommodations reveals that there are several AT tools being used, but they have checked AT not needed. Well, that tells me that they don't know what AT is, and that they also don't really understand the laws addressing it, because we need to address assistive technology. And that also means recognizing the things we're using that are in fact assistive technology tools for a student. Take a second to look at this matrices. Looking at this matrix, it's easy to see that the issue is whether or not the IEP team explores a range of AT devices. In some cases, we find that IEP teams tend only to think about the AT tools that they routinely use or have on the shelf. And that is very common. There was even a study once that showed that we did that. I thought that was an interesting study, but sometimes we need to document what we know is happening. The promising practice is that they always explore a range of AT devices, services, and other supports. So how can we improve our ability to explore a range of devices? Kathy and I want to share with you some things. I'm going to share my desktop again, and we're going to go look at the AT consideration. Let me see. Oops, sorry.
So while Penny navigates to the form, it is the
while Penny tries to navigate back to
she's going to have us look at the Assistive Technology Consideration Resource Guide, and this is one that was created by GPAT, Georgia Project for Assistive Technology. And as you look at the column on the left, you see that the instructional area is delineated in the task that the student is to do. The second column shows the standard tools that might be used in any classroom environment to support any student. The third column looks at modifications or accommodations of the task. And then the fourth column points out assistive technology solutions, things that might be no-tech, low-tech, all the way to things that are high-tech. And as Penny scrolls down on the left side of the screen, the instructional areas that are included are writing, reading, math, organizational skills, listening, oral communication, and aids to daily living. So this form's been on GPAT's website for a really long time, and while it hasn't been updated, I think it's a really good start for IEP teams who feel that they don't have an idea of the range of tools that exist. So Penny then moved on to a digital way to look at supports for students, and this is from Maryland's website, and it's called the Learning Links, and the actual assistive technology piece right here is called the Matchup. So what this allows the user to do is click on an instructional area. So Penny's going to click on the area of writing. And then the website moves to specific areas of writing that your student might need support. So if she clicks on the one that's for spelling and mechanics, there's a brief description on the right, and then she clicks on assistive technology tools, and as you see on this site, it also shows no and low-tech solutions on the left side, and then high-tech solutions on the right side. So the tool that I'm going to choose to get more information about is WordQ. So when Penny clicks on WordQ, it will provide you a link to WordQ where you can purchase WordQ, and it also gives you a screenshot of what the software looks like.
And I think we should say, we didn't put it anywhere on the screen, but it's marylandlearninglinks.org/3815.
And I just wanted to tell you one more thing about the website. It is easily navigable for somebody who is able to use a mouse, but if keyboard is your main input option, you might have some difficulty navigating this web page.
Yes, we struggled with whether to show it or not when it's not fully accessible, but we feel like it has important information for many of you. Just keep in mind, as Kathy pointed out. Okay, I should probably go back to the webinar.
Okay, so the last indicator is number 7. The assistive technology consideration process and results are documented in the IEP and include a rationale for the decision and supporting evidence. And I think personally this is something that is so difficult to have teams be able to do. I think it's important for teams to find a way to include in the IEP some information about how the consideration decision was made. And future IEP teams benefit from knowing the thinking and the discussion that took place at the current meeting with the current team. There's many ways that it can be included in the IEP, and it depends on the format that your state uses. It can be added information in a notes page or added to IEP minutes. And in some states, it's acceptable to attach a page of information that might be a brief description of the discussion, and then any supporting evidence that influenced the decision the team made. And that evidence might include data from trials, specific comments from the student, if they like the assistive technology or how they thought the assistive technology use was faring, or it could be observations made by other team members. So a look at the last matrices. The promising practice here is that the consideration process and results are clearly documented in the IEP and consistently include a rationale for the decision, including what supporting evidence was used. It's unfortunate that many IEP teams are hesitant to even mention AP, or sometimes even caution against writing AP in the IEP. And then again, some teams are encouraged to write uses assistive technology, but then they don't describe the assistive technology or how or when the student uses it in their environment. The documentation of AP ensures that the student has what they need when they need it, but it also lets the new reader of the IEP or the receiving team know how to prepare and provide for their students. Without the documentation, the student may not get what they need in a timely manner, and the receiving team will need to request the information from the sending team, and all of that takes time away from the student. So remember, it's just as important for the team to document that AT was considered and it wasn't needed. And they might include a sentence like, the student is making sufficient progress toward IEP goals with the accommodations and modifications that are currently in place. So we want to ask you another question.
Let me interrupt, Kathy. We've had a request to write down that web address on the chat, and I'm going to put down my phone and do that. You can keep talking, but I'm not going to go to the poll until I type that in.
Okay. Okay, so Penny's going to be typing the web address for GPAT, which is www.gpat.org. And then you'll see the Learning Links address, and that's to go to the matchup page.
And I've also had a message from GPAT, from Dee Dee Bunn. I'm so glad she's listening. And she said that...
Penny, we can't get, we're not hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to lay my phone down. I just had a chat message from Dee Dee Bunn from GPAT, and she said they're in the process of updating all of their consideration checklists and their resource guide, and it will be on their website soon. So keep checking the GPAT website, and that's gpat.org. It's in the handout that we suggested you download from the QIAT website.
Okay, so now we're going to move on.
Now we're going to do the poll.
And so we'd like you to just answer yes, no, or not sure. And do you feel that the quality indicators could help you identify any weaknesses in your AT consideration process?
Good, we're seeing lots of responses. We're going to hang on. I think apparently I went too fast last time because you did not see the results, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
And I will wait longer this time. So we have about 120 out of 198 people have responded. And I see lots of yeses, which is exciting for me. And I'll show you those results when I'm allowed to here. Okay, it's really stopped. So let me see.
Okay.
Now I'm seeing, are you seeing them?
No.
Okay.
But that's okay.
Well, it's going to come up at some time, I think. It pops into my screen as soon as I hit to show it. I'll just tell you that 93% of the people said, yes, it would help, and 7% said not sure, and no one said no. So, hooray! Thank you, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go on to the next slide. We're going to talk just for a few minutes, sort of the big picture here of what we're hoping you take away from this presentation today. And I want to start by reading to you some common errors that we have identified over the years in terms of consideration that keeps it from being high quality. One, of course, is that AT is considered for students with severe disabilities only. Another is that no one on the IEP team is knowledgeable regarding AT. Also, that the team does not use a consistent process based on data about the student, the environment, and the task when they make their decisions. Sometimes consideration of AT is limited to those items that are familiar to the team members or are available in the district. And, you know, things are developing so quickly now, and there's so many free things that are out there and inexpensive things that it's really important to find a way to go out and see what's out there periodically. Sometimes team members fail to consider access to the curriculum and the IEP goals as the core of the consideration process. Sometimes, if AT is not needed, the team fails to document the basis for its decision. So briefly, to review what makes quality AT consideration, it really requires informed IEP team members. And as Kathy said earlier, we like to think, everyone doesn't have to know about it, but somebody better know something, because otherwise it just cannot happen adequately. And also it requires a process that guides that discussion, because it really is a challenge for most of the IEP team members. IEP team members in your district. Quality consideration includes a thoughtful use of meaningful data, and Kathy gave some great illustrations where data is our experiences in the classroom with this child and with these tasks. It isn't always a test. Sometimes we get data from a specific informal or formal assessment, but really a lot of our meaningful data is about what has he done in the past, how has that worked. And so including that and realizing that the family members and the teachers, including our general ed teachers, are keys to making good decisions because they have that data. And finally, that it includes an exploration of the range of tools and strategies. We're going to do our last poll now, and this is a little harder than the other two because what we want to have you do is think about the 7 quality indicators for consideration. And did one of those really strike you as where you should start in your district? Is it that AT should be considered for all students with disabilities? Is it the team uses a collaborative decision-making process? Is it that team members have the collective knowledge and skills? Is it that decisions are based on goals and access to the curriculum and progress in it? Is it the IEP team gathers and analyzes data? Thanks, I see people starting to vote. I'm going to think about this. Is it that the team explore a range of AT devices and services? Or is it the consideration results are documented in the IEP? Where would you start? Which one of these? And I know some people want to say all, but we can't really start with all. So think about it, and thanks. We've heard from about 80 people out of 194. Some of the questions are cut off. That's why I read them to you. I am so sorry about that. Type in chat if there's a certain one that you need me to repeat so that you see all the words. We have about 126 responses. Gloria Olson from AbleNet is suggesting you maximize your screen to make sure that you see them all. You might try that. I see from some folks that's still not working. But again, if you need me to read one, I think we got the core words up there. Okay, we have slowed down about 144.
I think we need to move on time-wise.
Pardon me, Kathy?
I think we need to move on time-wise.
Shall we look at the results?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I guess they're all going to be valuable to somebody is kind of the way my results look. I am seeing that the collaborative decision-making process, about 19.6% thought that would be the most important for them. 17% thought that making sure that AT is considered for all students, no matter what their disability. Those were really the top two. And also that decisions are based on goals and access to the curriculum. 15% feel that's really critical. So thank you. And I see we still have a few things coming in. But the leaders tend to still be the leaders. So thank you. That's helpful information for us. I think all of them are valuable to you, but that in your specific instance, it helps to think about, well, what's the one that might make the most difference? Okay. up again. I'm going to go back to the QIAT website. I saw a text question that said, so I'm going to share my desktop again. And let's go to this and then just go to QIAT. Yes, that's good. Let's go there. So this is what the QIAT website looks like. And we're going to look at some resources. I wanted to point out to you that we have written what we call guiding documents for each of the areas, and the guiding document for consideration is number 6. So I just went to QIAT.org and then to resources, and I'm scrolling down the page. QIAT document for consideration, you can download it in Word or PDF, and we've taken each of the quality indicators with their intent statements, and we've written a few paragraphs about them, a little more in-depth than what we were able to do in the time we had today, and we provided a small example for each one, so that can help you. I saw that someone typed in that they couldn't find the handout I talked about. Down here in QIAT in Action, at the bottom of the resources page, you can see the Assistive Technology Consideration Guide. That's the one I showed you earlier in the presentation, and on the second side of it, there was the resources that told you about GPAT and WADI and OTAP and all those acronyms. Now I'm going to go to the resource bank. So let me scroll back up here.
So Penny's clicking on the resource bank, and we wanted to show you another document. This document was created by a member of the QIAT community. And Penny is showing you the documents that have been uploaded in the order of newest at the top and a little older at the bottom. The one she's going to navigate to is from the Virginia Department of Education, and this was contributed by Kathy Foster. It's called the QIAT Consideration Guide, and she's going to pull that up on her screen. And we like this one because, again, it begins with the instructional area at the top of the form. The team can then look at the area and discuss whether or not assistive technology is already provided. And if there's no identified areas of concern, then the consideration is complete. If there are areas of concern, the team would move down to parts 2 and 3, and they would identify the tasks the student needs to do, add what things are already in place for the student, and then the next part being what kind of assistive technology might we want the student to explore, and who's going to be responsible for putting that in place. As we go back
along here.
So this is the QIAT website, and you are on the home screen right now, and that screen just gives you the history and the mission of the quality indicators of assistive technology. The next tab, if you landed on that, it would take you to the indicators, and you can download the indicator in either a Word document or a PDF. The next tab is to take you directly to the QIAT list. There's a link on that page if you want to join the list or if you would like to leave that list. We were just at the resources tab, which allows us to get documents created by people at Summit or created by quality leadership, indicator leadership team, or also from any people who have offered documents from their school or district. There's an announcement section, and that's where we like to add any information about conferences or summits that we might have. And then the last section, the About Us, is about the Quality Indicator Leadership Team. So the screenshot that was taken a few months ago, and if you arrive at this website next week or next month, there might be a different picture based on what we like at that time.
So I'm not sure. That's Kathy Lalik right there in that picture. I also want to tell you, if I could interrupt, that there have been a couple of questions about how are they going to get how are folks going to get the PowerPoint and the handouts, and you'll get them in your thank you email. I'm sorry, you had something else to say.
Yeah, if you participated in the first QIAT webinar, which was a brief overview of QIAT, This section is certainly familiar to you, but I also want to remind you that you can view that recorded webinar or the one today by going to the AbleNet University website, and the recorded webinars are under the tab called Recorded, AT Switches. And that's where you're going to find all of the webinars related to the quality indicators.
Okay, and we are ready to ask you for some questions, comments, or suggestions. So we've saved a few minutes to hear from you. Please share your questions or comments now, and I will try to answer them or hand it off to Kathy to answer them. Where do you find the last PDF you had up is one question. On the QIAT website under Resource Bank. So the last PDF we had from Virginia is on the QIAT website. Go to Resources, and then on the right-hand side of that page, click on Resource Bank. Someone wants to know if we have a list of iPad apps for different areas of concern. No, we're talking more about process. Can I give the AbleNet website information again? I think we'll be coming to it on the last couple slides. Are there similar tools that can be used in private practice? I'm not sure I understand that one. Can you ask that in another way? Are there resources for data collection strategies? We're not prepared to share those today, but one of the sessions will be on evaluation of effectiveness, and that'll be coming up in a couple months if you check the AbleNet calendar, and they will talk about that. Do we recommend that training on a recommended device be incorporated into the IEP document? Kathy, you want to answer that?
Well, I think that depends on your district and what the best practice is at your district. Sometimes training information is added to the student's record of the file that the IEP chairperson keeps. We can certainly talk about what the student has used or the technology, if the trial period was successful, to add the description of that to the IEP. I'm sorry, I can't be specific about that answer. Yeah.
It depends.
It depends.
Yes. We had a question again about the resource bank. Let me go back a minute, and someone wanted to know. This is the name of the document in the resource bank that Kathy just showed you, the Virginia AT Consideration Guide. So that's on your slides when you get them.
And I think we have time for one more question, and it was, how might you use QIAT when the administrators are resistant to begin with? I think that, I know that a couple of districts have used the matrices to kind of just take temperature and look at a score of how are you doing in your district related to assistive technology services. And that's a good beginning to help the administrators take a look at that and then decide which one of the indicators of the indicator areas will best help us make change according to the scores from the matrices.
We have a question. Are these quality indicators the same across districts? Yes, they are. We had people from all kinds of districts and private practice and all ages that they served, develop these, and we believe they can be used in any setting. We also have a question about, in our opinion, when is a full AT eval needed versus a trial? And I have to tell you, we're going to talk about that next month. We're going to talk about assessment. Now, Kathy, I have 23 after. We go till 30 after. Is that right?
I thought we went till 25 after.
Okay. Then let's move along. I have a few more slides at the end here.
So the next QIAT webinar is November 20th on quality indicators for assistive technology assessment, as Penny just mentioned, and the presenters will be Joan Bravo Larson and Penny Reed.
Yeah, you have to listen to me again next month if you sign up. And I hope you do.